Grab a seat, sip some wisdom, and stay a while. This is the Prosperity Lounge, where growth gets personal.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Prosperity Lounge, where hope meets freedom and growth gets personal. I'm your host, Joey Ruffalo, financial coach, author, and founder of the Prosperity Lounge community, where we help people reclaim their finances, their freedom, and their future. If you missed last week's episode, we sat down with Adeline Walker. She is currently the highest-ranking cadet in the Virginia Tech Corps Cadets. We talked about leadership through the lens of mentorship, transparency, and resilience. In fact, it was so powerful, we didn't even finish our conversation. We did a special live from the lounge YouTube video this past Wednesday. We finished our conversation on mentorship and transparency and everything else. It was fantastic. I definitely suggest you guys check it out. Check that out. Go back there and watch it. It was just a great conversation. In fact, like I said, you can catch the replay anytime on YouTube. You can catch it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, everywhere you can listen to podcasts. And you can watch the video on YouTube. You can always join the Prosperity Lounge community at theprosperitylounge.com. And in fact, if you could still get our Declaration of Financial Freedom download, you can get that at theprosperitylounge.com/freedom. Tonight we're shifting a little bit from leadership and motion. We're going to talk about a story of miraculous recovery and renewed purpose. But first, if you want to be a part of tonight's conversation, you can call us, 865-577-4885. That's 865-577-4885. Or you could text in at 865-236-1791. That's 865-236-1791. You can always get in the chat on YouTube and ask away. We look forward to seeing who's in there tonight and saying hello to everybody. And checking everybody out. So, now, tonight's episode is one that I hope you guys never forget. We had a great conversation the other day leading up to this. This is one of those episodes that's not about money. It's not about business. It's really not about health, but it isn't. It's about something deeper. It's purpose. What if your path to healing wasn't just a few weeks of recovery, but it was over 6,800 days of pain? What if your greatest breakthrough came at the end of your rope? That's what happened to our guest, Kent Morrell. After a car accident left him in debilitating pain, Kent spent nearly 2 decades battling the medical system, enduring 52 spinal procedures, and even reaching the point where he considered ending his life. But what happened on Memorial Day 2019 changed everything. So let's pull up a chair and chat with Kent, who's actually joined tonight with his lovely wife, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us. Kent, welcome to the Prosperity Lounge.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. Our conversation that we had, and people always know, I always talk to my guests ahead of time just to kind of get a sense of where we are and have a conversation. And the conversation that we had the other night was life-changing for me as well.
Really?
Hearing your story. We've crossed paths a few times, and I always know Ken as the guy who's very upbeat, very, very always smiling, always happy, and I was trying to figure out why. And then we're on Facebook, and I always see your bonus day post, and I'm like, what is he talking about? This is just great. Maybe he had some incident, heart attack, medical procedure, heart attack or something, I don't know. But then hearing your story, it touched me in a way that was profound. It really was. You start seeing things and putting things into perspective. I mean, I've shared, not so much on the show here, but I'll share My wife last year had a major medical operation where she had a tumor removed from her skull. 13-hour surgery. Didn't know if it was cancerous. We had no idea what was going on. Huge recovery. She's in the other room right now, just living life to the fullest. And I see how she recovered from that and how she lives her life. And I see how you are having this renewed purpose for yourself that we've talked about. And I kind of see similarities, and I kind of see similarities with you and I, Jennifer, in the caregiver role, in a sense of like where do we step in, and what kind of role do we play, and how much do we support people, and how much do we just say it's on them to really just do it, or is it on us to continue to lift them up every day, and things like that. Today we're celebrating our 25th anniversary.
Yes, happy anniversary.
Thank you. So she's in there smiling, having a good time, and she's got that renewed sense of life. So take me back to September 22nd, 2000. You're a small business owner, you're wrapping up work.
Right.
Something happens, it changes everything.
Well, let me go back a little bit farther than that. We were living the dream, high school sweethearts. We met, I was a freshman, she was a sophomore, summer band about this time of year in 1984, so we've been together for 41 years now. We ended up getting married in 1990, and always wanted 4 kids. We were going to wait, but our first one came a little bit soon, so our first one was born within the first year of us being married, and we decided let's go ahead and get busy and have our 4. So had our first one in 91, first daughter, second daughter in 93, third daughter in 95, and then on the last one I said, on the first 3 I prayed for healthy, happy children, and on the last one I said, all right, Lord, please let it be a boy. And I think God said, all right. And if our son had been our first, he might have been our only one, because boys are so different than girls, and we were on a first name basis with staff at the ER. It's your turn to take him. No, it's your turn to take him. But I was going to school full time, and it's hard to go to college full time and try to support a family. I was also working full time, and the goal was for my wife, Jennifer, to be a stay-at-home mom, and that was the plan. So I ended up starting a business to help pay for college in 93, and it took off. And Jennifer was going to class to take notes for me. And at the end of that semester in 94, she said, honey, why are you still in school when you're making the money you want to make now versus 2 years when you graduate? So we were off and living a dream, small business owner, stay-at-home wife, 4 kids. We ended up getting into private school at Grace Christian Academy. So Friday, September 22nd, about 3:45 in the afternoon, I was less than a mile from my house, taking a back way over to Middlebrook Pike. And I own an aquarium maintenance business, so we did like nursing homes and commercial places was my favorite people to work for. So I'm driving over this back road, and it's a narrow road, and it had just rained a little bit. And there's a narrow part where you kind of have to do one at a time. One person goes down the hill, one person goes up it. And I was waiting at the bottom of the hill. This person was coming down, and I see out of the corner of my left, out of my eye, looking to the left, that she is not turning. And I had about 2 seconds to realize she was going to nail me. And she did. She hit my car going about 40. Her left front bumper hit my left front wheel of my van and knocked my van off the road. And I did the worst thing that you can do, which is hold on. And so I held on to the steering wheel as tightly as I could, because I'm like, what is your reaction going to be when you realize a car is about to nail you? Hold on, right. So what happened was I was holding on, and I didn't find this out till later. Well, I'll tell you about the injury in a minute. But my wife got there pretty quick, and this was my son's 3rd birthday. We had plans that evening to do birthday stuff. And I was just irritated that this had ruined my day and might be ruining my evening, and I wasn't thinking about what had really just happened. And the police officer that responded told my wife, you need to get him to the hospital because he's hurt worse than he realizes. And I didn't feel anything except frustration at the moment, and Jennifer was encouraging me to go. And so I said, no, I just need to go home and rest. Well, about 2 hours after I got home, the pain started showing up. And what I found out later on was I was holding on so tightly to the steering wheel that I ripped the thoracic muscles on both sides of my spine, where your shoulder muscle is attached to your spine. And since you have been through some healthcare issues, and as you continue to go forward through it, you're going to learn. They call it practicing medicine for a reason, because they're never perfect at it. And so in medicine, after accidents, the normal thing that works for 80% of the people, 80 to 90%, is you rest for a week or two, and then you start physical therapy to try to recover your muscles that you've damaged, because muscle tears are normal when you're in an accident. And so they started encouraging me to go to physical therapy, and so I did, and I got worse, and I got worse, and the pain got worse, and they kept telling me, keep doing the therapy, and it got worse, and it got worse. And it got to a point where I was in the bed hurting, or I was going to PT, and it took them about 2 years. I did physical therapy for 2 years. Oh, the doctor said when I finally went to the hospital Friday evening, the doctor there said, you're going to hurt for about 6 weeks. And I thought, 6 weeks? I don't have time to hurt for 6 weeks. You got to take it easy for 6 weeks. Well, it turned out it was 18 years, 8 months, and 5 days was how long that my pain lasted. And so finally in 2002, I had one of my customers was a neurosurgeon, had an aquarium at his house in his office. And he did surgery on me, cut off some spinous processes in my thoracic spine, and tried to remove the scar tissue, because what happened, all that physical therapy had caused scar tissue to grow into my spine. And it was pressing on the nerves, constant pressure on the nerves. It's taken me a long time to talk about. I talk about my bonus days, and I've never really talked about exactly why I count my bonus days. And I'm going to tell you now, every breath I took hurt. It felt like somebody was sticking razor blades in my spine, because movement is what caused the pain. And when you take a breath in your thoracic area, your spine moves. So every breath I took for 18 years, 8 months, and 5 days felt like someone was stabbing me in the back. And that's between T4 and T11 was my damage area. And so I tried like girdle kind of things to hold me tight, but if I got it tight enough, I couldn't breathe. And so finally, that was in August of 2002 when he did the surgery, and my surgeon said, it's a 50-50 chance this will work. Well, it didn't work. And so finally in December, they sent us to another specialist, and it was a pain management group. And the pain management doctor, he went through our history, and he said, the reason you're here is because you've tried everything. And he went through some more stuff, and he finally said, it's time to realize this is permanent. Adjust your life accordingly. Wow. Now, what that meant was, because they originally kept telling me I was going to get better. So, and Jennifer was, a year into this, was like, do I need to get a job, because things were getting tight? And I was the optimist. Now I'm a pessimistic. I'm an optimistic pessimist now. But at the time I was optimist, and I thought, no, it'll be all right. I'm going to get better.
6 more weeks, we're good.
Yes, 6 more weeks. And so finally at this point I had lost a large portion of my business just because I couldn't keep up with the customers. And when they finally told me that, well, Jennifer was with me, what that meant was she's going to have to get a job. She had been a stay-at-home mom to our 4 kids. We were going to have to pull our kids out of private school and move. We're going to have to sell our house and move. And we did that. And it almost destroyed us. I still have a hard time just thinking about just how chaotic the first 2.5 years were. And around that, it's stressful to go through as a family things like this. And I'm a big advocate for counseling, because you need help when you're going through something serious. And Jennifer started wanting to go to marriage counseling in 2003. And as a man, I don't need counseling. Well, I didn't think I needed counseling until my oldest child was elected by her siblings to come ask us if we were getting a divorce. And I thought, because we were fighting, because I resented her for being able to work. She resented me for being able to stay home, even though I was bedridden and writhing in pain. It was a role reversal.
Sure.
And so at that point I realized, oh, I do need counseling. And it saved our marriage. And I'm thankful for so I'm a big advocate for marriage. And go to a Christian counselor. Don't go to some non-Christian to tell you to do stupid stuff.
And we still go every week to counseling.
Right, but it's dealing with different stuff now. It's adult kids and life things outside of this. And part of it is sometimes still working through what we've gone through, because if you go through a disaster, these people up in North Carolina and upper East Tennessee that experienced the disaster of Helene, that only lasted a few days. It's going to take them decades to recover from that. And same thing with something physical, cancer, something that you don't see coming that happens to you, it messes up your world. Because I was one of those people that believed, oh, God will bless you and God's going to take care of you. Well, God normally uses suffering to accomplish his goals. I mean, if you look at the apostles, 11 of the 12 died a martyr's death. All right. Our salvation was purchased through Christ's crucifixion. All right. So I don't want to hear anybody say that God's going to promise you, health, wealth, and wisdom in your life.
Sure.
So going forward, I started looking for anything that would help. Anything experimental. I got part of my life back. Like I said, I had the major surgery in August of 2002 where they cut me open and worked on it. From that point forward, it was just different procedures.
Now, before we get to the procedure parts, and before we talk about this bottom low point that I think you're kind of getting into right now, I want to bring Jennifer in on this a little bit.
Yeah.
So you hear the news that there's an accident. What's your first reaction to? Because it sounds like from the conversation today and what I've had with him the other day was, you're the one that kind of said you gotta go to the hospital. They told you got to take him there. He wasn't listening, so you had to convince him to go. You hear the accident, you have to convince him to go. You guys get this news. What's going through your head?
I think, I remember standing there. I remember seeing everything. It's all in slow motion because it's the looking back that makes that moment so pivotal. Because at that point, I didn't know how long it was going to last. I didn't know if this was a weekend, taking it easy, and then back to work. You don't realize in the moment. I think for me, the moment that I realized it was sitting in that doctor's office after a little over 2 years and them saying to me, adjust your life accordingly. Like, those words changed my life, and that's what made all that moment so pivotal. And I'm in that moment thinking, he has all his business stuff in the car. We can't get it all in the other car. How are we going to get what he needs his customers? Just all the mundane things about how do you take care of what you were doing that day. And ultimately, that's not what mattered at all.
Okay. Well, let me rephrase this. Your injury early on, you kind of talked about it just briefly. Your identity as a business owner, but more importantly as a husband and a father, how did that injury affect that identity?
Well,
or did it?
Oh, it did. I watched when they finally told me, and they diagnosed me with permanent nerve damage to my spine. That was basically what the diagnosis was when they told me I wasn't going to get better, because normally you don't heal from nerve damage to your spine. And so I watched every hope and dream and aspiration I ever had evaporated. And the realization, as a man, you want to be able to provide for your family. So I felt like a failure because I couldn't provide for my family. I felt like a failure because I couldn't play with my kids like I wanted to play with them, because I couldn't do physical activity. And so as my son got older, we played video games. That was the thing we could do, because I could lay still, sit still on the floor, and we could play Halo on co-op mode.
Nice.
And it was a great bonding experience. The girls were a little older. They would come home from school and pile on the bed and tell me about their days, and that was nice. But the other thing about this was I didn't sleep. So for 14 years, I didn't sleep more than 3 or 4 hours a night, and I would dread going to bed. So it got to be a depressive episode just going to bed knowing I wasn't going to sleep. So I would go downstairs after everybody had gone to bed, play my video games, and listen to Coast to Coast AM till 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I would go to bed when the sun was coming up, when I was exhausted, and sleep for 3 or 4 hours, and then start that all over again. And so for me, it was just finding the way to make it till tomorrow. And something I told you the other day was I thought things were bad then, but every time I thought things couldn't get worse, they did get worse because we're just up to 2005.
Yeah.
Well, let me add to that. You're saying all the kids would come in to your room and pile on the bed and tell you about their day, but I would do that too. And I think that's the thing that kept us knitted together as a family, because emotionally you were still there for all of us, even if you didn't do everything physically. Because, I can, well, guess what happened at work today, and flop on the bed with you and all the kids. And I think you having the time and space to be, even though you're in pain and you're dealing with your identity, but those moments kept us knitted together as a family.
Right.
Wow, it's actually pretty powerful thinking of that.
Right.
Because you could have just retreated fully, as some people have.
Right.
Rightfully so. I mean, when you're talking about the lack of sleep and the lack of, just exhausting yourself out till you kind of exhaust yourself to sleep. Very similar with that when we were going through our debt-free journey was I didn't sleep for 2 years.
Wow. That wears on you too, brother.
Every time we get to a point where there was it was a loud truck coming through our complex, I'm like, the car's getting towed because it's going to get repoed.
Yeah.
So I would jolt awake and just kind of sleep with one eye open. And it was like 2 years of that.
Wow.
And it's exhausting. And my health suffered. And my mental health, my physical health, the relationship suffered from that. Just from lack of sleep, really.
Right.
And that stress from dealing with that. And then being so exhausted during the day that you start making mistakes at work and out in the world and everything else. And it compounds. And it's sleep is important.
Right. Yes, it is.
Sleep is important.
Yep. And I started, like I said, I was looking for experimental things because traditional medicine wasn't going to work for me. They had already told me there's nothing they can do to help me. And so we tried, one of the things I tried was I've got joint laxity. So my joints go farther than they should. That was one of the things that contributed to the nerve damage and the scar tissue growing in, was because most people don't have loose joints like I have. And so it was the looseness that allowed the scar tissue to invade the medial branch on both sides of my spine. And so one of the things I tried was called prolotherapy, where they inject a shrinking agent between each vertebrae to shrink, to make your elastic shrink up, to remove some of the laxity. Well, that was a needle stuck in between my vertebrae from my neck all the way down around, because your muscles on the lower part of your spine wrap around into your pubic area. And so the doctor laid across my chest and had Jennifer lay across me, and then I heard her gasp because he whipped out a needle that was 4 inches long.
Oh, gosh.
And pushed it through this area to reach the ligaments on the backside of my spine. And to hear my wife go,
my stomach's a little churny right now.
right. So, I mean, that was just one of the things I did. But there was a new treatment called radiofrequency ablation that came out. It's frequently done to get your heart back into the right rhythm. Well, they found it can interrupt the nerve signal in your spine too. And they've done a lot of cervical ones and a lot of lumbars. But when I started hearing about it, there were only 3 doctors east of the Mississippi that were doing radiofrequency ablation for your thoracic spine. And one of them happened to be at Tenova, and he happened to be in the group I was already seeing. So even though we went through terrible suffering, the Lord was answering prayers we had even before we knew it. Because the other thing, when Jennifer had to get a job, she was in education and had her college degree when we got married. And thankfully, her mother was like, you better keep your license up to date because you never know what's going to happen. But when we found out in December that she was going to have to get a job, we prayed, please let her get a job at one of 2 middle schools. And she walked into Knox County to apply for the job, and she got a job at one of those 2 schools. And when we picked our insurance at the time, the insurance we picked in January of 2003 was the only insurance that would have paid for this experimental procedure without it being completely out of pocket. So, and God did stuff like that for us all the way through. So even though the suffering was terrible and we would feel like we're hopeless, God would do little things to show us you're not alone. And something that I'm not ready to really talk about, I will talk about it. I need to talk about this. Things got really bad the first year. And so things got really bad. And I was begging God to kill me the first year. But I wasn't at the point where I was going to do it myself. But I reached a point where I had to do something, and I talked to our pastor, and I got anointed with oil on Wednesday night, October 17th, 2001, and it was in a prayer chapel at Calvary Baptist down here on Kingston Pike. It was our senior pastor, a couple of deacons, a couple of the other pastors, and our kids. Mm-hmm. And so when he poured the oil over me, I was kneeling, Jennifer was kneeling in front of me. When he poured the oil over me, I felt like an electrical presence come over me, and the worst part of the pain, not all the pain, but the worst part of the pain left me when he poured the oil over me. And wow. I was wondering if I had been healed then. And I will tell you what the conclusion was after I tell you what the rest of what happened. So when we left, I'm wondering, is this just in my head? And so Jennifer and I were talking, and I said, well, did you feel anything? And I'm like, well, did you feel anything? And she said, I felt an electrical presence descend upon me. And she told me where it stopped. It was the same place on me. And our kids had already gone to bed. We were home, and they were in their rooms. And so we went to each one of our children and said, tell us what your experience was. Our oldest child said she looked up to see who came in the room. Our second child, our second or third, I'll get them mixed up. One said it felt like an angel hug from the inside.
That was
Lindsay. Kelly said it just felt good. She didn't want it to stop. And Jason, who was, 4.5, prayed to receive Christ that night. So this was another point where the Lord said, I am with you through this. And what I felt like God was saying, you're going to go through something, but I'm going to be with you.
Okay.
And so from that point forward, I didn't question. I did a lot of questioning God that first year. Why are you allowing us to go through this? And I stopped asking God, what are you doing, when I got anointed with oil. Wow. And that's one of the first times I've told that story publicly, because that's one of the ultra personal things that the Lord has shown us. And so it was just a weird thing to go through something like that.
That is
But going to
amazing.
the experimental stuff, so the radio frequency ablation, let me tell you a quick thing about that. How this works is, well, I'm watching the time too.
Are you good?
All right, so how this works is, now I had this done, now when I talk about having 52 surgical procedures, it's the procedure I'm getting ready to tell you about. They had to do a test procedure first, and that's where they use a short-acting anesthetic in between the vertebrae to see if you actually get pain relief. It's called a medial branch block. Insurance required that first. And then the radio frequency ablation, that was quite the show, because the first one they did, like I said, it was experimental. When I had the first one done, they rolled me into a room, and there were like 10 people in the room. There was a cardiologist. The only serious side effect is cardiac arrest, because they're working just on the other side of my heart.
Okay.
And they told us that. And this is how much pain I was in. I didn't care what the risks were. This is how bad it was. Possible heart attack. So the first time that I had this done, they had a cardiologist in the room, and all his job was to watch my heart. And then they had a sales rep for the company that made the needle, the special radio frequency ablation needle. And they had 2 other doctors that were learning how to do it, and they had 3 nurses in there. And they strapped me to the table, and I'm like, why are you strapping me down to the table? And they had a big grounding probe mat on my leg, and the doctor was grounded to the floor as well, because they have to run electricity through before they can burn. It's called burning the nerve. Radio frequency wave, you're burning the nerve.
I had something similar done on my knee years ago.
So, and they couldn't fully sedate me. I had to be semi-sedated. And I'm like, why do I need to be semi-sedated? He said, because we have to probe the nerve bundles to find the right nerve.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, well, how are you going to know? Yeah. I said, well, how are you going to know when you find the right nerve? And he said, trust me, you'll know. So that's why I was strapped to the table. So, and I had, like I said, the damage is between T4 and T11, and they could only do 6 spots was all insurance would. So between 6 vertebrae, they did this between each vertebrae, just on one side, because they didn't want to accidentally kill me, so they wouldn't do both sides at the same time. So I had to come back to have the second side done. So that's why I ended up having so many surgical procedures.
Oh, gosh.
So what they did was, when he found that first nerve, when I thought I was going to come off the table, and then they run electricity through it to make sure it doesn't go to anything important, because if it stimulated something like in my arm or my leg or something, they wouldn't be able to burn it. This went to a sensation of skin on my back. So when this worked, there were places on my back I couldn't feel if you touched it. And then they did the radio frequency ablation, which is heating that needle up to about 160 degrees, and they burn it twice, 60 seconds each time. So it felt like a fire was in my spine. And they did that in 6 places, 12 minutes of burning. And that was what I was willing to go through just to get relief. And I got relief from that. But it's not permanent. They have to keep doing it over time.
Yeah.
And after they did this the first couple of times with me awake, they could fully sedate me because they could compare it to the X-rays, the
Gotta know where to
CTs,
go and
right?
stuff, yeah.
And so I did that over the next 10 years. I had 27 radio frequencies and 25 medial branch blocks, multi-level, about $700,000 worth of work. And then not to make this political, but when the Affordable Care Act came along and our president at the time said, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. We liked our plan. We did not get to keep our plan. And he said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. We liked our doctor. We didn't get to keep our doctor long after that. And that's when I started paying attention to what was going on politically.
Yeah.
But I would get relief for a few months, and then I got about 6 months of relief, and then it would be time to burn the nerves again. And that was the cycle we were on, and I would have 3 to 4. Now, relief for me was giving me 3 to 4 functional hours a day out of bed. That was what I called success and relief, to where I could go work part-time. I had turned my business over to an employee. He's a business partner now. He's run my company ever since. And I wouldn't have a company if it weren't for my business partner. So until 2013, we had the radio frequency ablations, and then insurance stopped covering that, and I had to start looking for other things. And then the next experimental thing, I had to go back and looking for more experimental things. And so one of the side effects of having the nerve damage is I had a constant muscle spasm in my spine. I always had a muscle spasm going all the time. And so I thought, well, maybe we should try Botox, because I know people who've had migraines and they use Botox to, stop the migraines.
Yeah.
And I found a neurologist that was willing to try it on my spine, to inject Botox into the muscles on both sides of my spine in an effort to paralyze the muscle spasm. Well, accidentally paralyzed the wrong muscles and magnified the spasm. So for about 3 months, it looked like somebody was hitting me with a baseball bat. And we call that the Botox incident of 2013, and that ended my search for experimental things. Because when I said things can always get worse, this was one of the times where things got a lot worse.
At least your back looks younger now.
Oh, yeah, right. But in 2015, I'm going to move this along a little bit. 2015, the state changed some laws. If you remember back then, there were pill mills, doctors that were writing too much medicine. Well, there were also legitimate pain management doctors that were treating actual patients with pain like me. And I have a genetic issue where I don't process medications correctly, and it takes me a significant amount more of pain medicine, anesthesia, for me to get relief. Matter of fact, I woke up in the middle of one of my surgeries when I was supposed to be fully sedated, and that really freaked my doctors out. And then I had genetic testing done in 2013 that showed there's a system in your liver called the cytochrome P450 system, where 90% of your medications are processed through this. There's 8 enzymes that act on them. And I've got anomalies on 3 of these enzymes. And so basically most pain medicine burns through me like gasoline through a dragster. It just does not last long. So I needed a politically incorrect amount of medication to get relief.
Imagine.
And so with the CDC changed some rules in 2016, and the state started changing rules in 2015. And the goal was to save lives, and yes, that sounds great. But what happened was between 2016 and 2021, the overdose deaths in the state of Tennessee increased by 500%, and our suicide rate now exceeds the national average. So the goal was to save lives, but they've not done that. They've taken away the right of doctors to treat patients the way they need to be treated, and that's actually what got me involved in being a patient advocate, was when I was dealing with this. It took a few years for it to really affect me, but I knew it was coming because I was talking to patients that were already losing access to care. And I was already going to Nashville. Like I said, I would have 3 to 4 good hours a day, and I could borrow time from the next 2 days. So if I had a 12-hour day, if I left to go to Nashville to advocate and came home and I was gone for 10 or 12 hours, that meant I was in bed completely for the next 2 or 3 days to pay back that time. That was how that worked for me. I could do an all-day thing, but I paid for it and had to pay that time back. So the average was 3 to 4 hours a day. Well, I lost great doctors because they were afraid to treat me because the DEA was coming after doctors and the state wasn't. They had repealed a law that protected patients and doctors in 2015. And so I finally got in to see another doctor, and I knew he was the end of the line, and he started pushing an implantable pain pump on me in 2017. And I had already been evaluated for an implantable pain pump, and the doctors told me in 2013 I was not a candidate because my damage was too broad. And implantable pain pump it's a hockey puck sized device that they install in your abdomen, and they run leads to your spinal cord, and it pumps pain medicine directly into your spinal cord. The other thing about this is the failure rate is incredibly high, and people have had disastrous results using these, and I knew the side effects of these. That's another reason I said no to this. Well, that doctor didn't care that there were bad side effects, and he didn't care that I had been evaluated and said no. It made him look good because he didn't have to keep writing prescriptions of high-dose opioids for me. He said, the state's too stupid to realize it's a similar amount of medication, but because it's going directly into your spinal cord, they're not going to see how much is really going into it.
Wow.
So I just told him no. I'd already jumped through all the hoops at that time. I had Botox injected into my spinal muscles. If they had told me to stick feathers up my nose and light them on fire, I would have tried that. That's how desperate I was. But at this point, I'm 18 years, it's 17 years in. And so another thing about pain management in the state of Tennessee, or at least at the time, I had to be drug tested at every appointment. And this was to make sure,
Okay.
This was to make sure what they had it was just to protect the doctors. The state law was you had to be, I think, tested twice a year. But some doctors are just worried and they want to make sure they look good to the government. So I got tested every 28 days. So it's to make sure that the medicine I've been prescribed is in my system and nothing illegal is in my system. Mm-hmm. And I never did illegal stuff because I was afraid of losing my doctor because of this. And so he asked me about the implantable pain pump in October, and I said no. He asked me in November through the computer because he was a specialist. And one of the state changes was I had to see a specialist. Well, specialists don't treat patients. All right, nurse practitioners treat patients, and specialists are doing procedures. So I saw him personally in October, and then he would ask through the nurse practitioner on the computer every time I came, do you want to do the implantable pain pump? Are you going to do the implantable pain pump? So their computer system was down in February, so I didn't get asked that. When I show up for my March appointment, March 27th, and my doctor told me, you put a target on my back, what I'm prescribing you pulls up the entire average of my group, because it was a lot of medicine, and he did not like that, and he didn't want to treat me. But I'm going to avoid the profanity. He just didn't want to tell me he didn't want to treat me. He was too big of a coward to tell me he didn't want to treat me.
Okay.
So I show up at my March appointment. It was Tuesday, March 27th. You remember important days. And they hand me a letter at the desk that says I'm being dismissed as a patient for irregularities on my drug screen. Well, I was not real happy about that. I'm like, what irregularities? And they wouldn't tell me, and they wouldn't give me a copy of the drug screen, and they finally had to ask me to leave because I was not a happy camper about this. Because I lived my life in 28-day segments. Because you never know, are you going to be able to, is your doctor going to keep treating you after 28 days, or are you going to lose access to the medicine you need to function? Mm-hmm. And this was medicine I needed just to have 3 or 4 hours of functional time a day. I needed this medicine to have pain relief because, like I said, my pain was every breath I took felt like I was being stabbed in my back. So not having the pain medicine to knock the edge off of that, and I never got full relief of my pain. It was just enough to make it manageable. And so I immediately went to my primary care doctor after I left, had my primary care run a drug screen, and by law, you're supposed to send your medical records within 30 days when you get a request from another doctor. And I had him request my medical records because I wanted to see that drug screen. Yeah. Well, it took him 6 months to get my medical records.
No kidding.
And guess what was not included?
The drug test.
The drug test was not included.
Huh.
So he was just scared to treat me.
Okay.
And so he dismissed me as a patient because he was scared of the government. And one of the things I say is fear makes you do terrible things. And he feared the government, and he almost cost my life. So this was 2018. Now, 2018, like I said, every time I thought things couldn't get worse, they got worse.
2018 is the bottom.
2018, now we're reaching the bottom.
Okay.
So this was a Tuesday. My oldest daughter, Katie, was graduating flight attendant training for American Airlines on Thursday. So we flew to Dallas for that. And I had a disaster supply of medicine saved up, because if you're a chronic pain patient, you've got to have a disaster supply, because if something happens and you don't have medicine, you're screwed. And so I had a disaster supply, and I thought, well, I'm going to have to get into this, because I had no more prescriptions, and I knew another doctor wasn't going to treat me, so I wasn't getting any more medicine. And so I knew things were going to get really bad. I just didn't know how long and how soon. And I had 2 daughters getting married coming up. So Katie was graduating flight attendant training in Dallas, and so we flew to Dallas for that. And I started cutting my medicine when we got home on Friday from that. And then our second daughter got married in April. And I had 2 kinds of medicine. I had long-acting medicine and short-acting medicine. And so I started cutting back my long-acting medicine first. And Lindsay got married. It was a beautiful wedding over here in Townsend in April. And so I ended the long-acting medicine a couple of days after her wedding. And then Kelly was getting married in Nashville in June. And pain started coming back even worse. And I knew the pain was going to come back. And Kelly's wedding went well. And I stopped all my medicine a few days after Kelly's wedding in June. Now, at this point, I had been on long-term opioid therapy for 18 years. And so your body gets dependent on it. It's not that you're like addicted, like you're looking for a high, but your body becomes dependent on that medicine, because you've got opioid receptors and it's expecting them for pain relief. And I knew the pain was going to come back. And the pain came back with a vengeance. But what I did not expect was developing full-blown panic attacks, the worst anxiety. I cannot convey how bad the anxiety was. And depression just went through the floor. And at this point, like I said, this is 2018, the June of 2018. I had been told I wasn't ever going to get better. All right, I had been dealing with this for 18 years. And I told Jennifer, baby, I think I'm done. I do not see any reason for me to go on. And I was talking about suicide, and I wanted permission for her to do it, to tell me to do it. Because in the story of Job, when Job's wife says, curse God and die, she's telling him to go kill himself. Well, Jennifer was not happy about this. Jennifer said, I have not gone through 18 years of misery for you to quit now. You better find a way through this. And I thought, well, crap, I guess I'm going to have to find a way through this. And I still thought I was going to die. I thought there was no way I'm going to see 2019. And things got really bad. And she was very encouraging. And I need you to talk here in a minute about this. It got to where I had to start looking for some alternative treatments. And I don't necessarily like talking about this, but I was put in a position where my only choices were suicide or illegal treatment. That was it. And since my daughter was a flight attendant for American Airlines, parents could go anywhere in the world, and just pay the tax on the flight. So I thought about going to Europe to try some things that are legal in Europe that aren't legal here. And then I realized, if it works, I can't come home, because I'm not going to use street drugs. And a good friend of mine that had walked with me through this, that I'd known for 20 years, told me, you should try the local option. And I'll just go ahead and talk about this. He was talking about cannabis, and I laughed in his face. I thought, there is no way that a stupid plant is going to touch my kind of pain. Well, it did. It took me 6 or 7 months to find what worked for me. I had to do a lot of experimenting, making my own medicine. I made an oil out of it. And I found what worked. But getting to what worked was the hard part, because I was still dealing with the severe anxiety and the severe depression and the panic attacks. And I used to think, when people talked about anxiety, that there's no way it could be as bad as physical pain.
Yeah.
Brother, I know physical pain. All right, I do. I know pain. Matter of fact, I've got a blog, iknowpain.com.
Right.
Well, after I got to personally experience severe anxiety and severe depression and severe panic attacks, I went back to people and apologized for being critical, because there is nothing worse than that. The 6 months, 8 months that I dealt with that was far worse than the 18 years of physical pain I ever dealt with. That is a war going on in your mind that you just, like, I'm a Star Trek fan, so if you've ever watched the old Star Treks where Spock loses control of his emotions,
Oh, yeah.
that's what it felt like in my mind. It was a war in my mind. Wow. And there were about 90 days, starting in September, where I had to make a conscious decision to take my next breath. For 90 days, I had to decide to take my next breath. It was that bad. And it was so dark, I never thought I was going to see sunlight again. And Jennifer was afraid to come home. She was afraid I wouldn't be alive. And she was working out in East Knox County. She's in education. And she would normally call me when she was driving home, and she stopped calling me. And I asked her, why did you stop calling me? And she said, it's because I was afraid you wouldn't answer the phone.
Wow.
And so that's how dark and bad it was during that. And
let me bring Jennifer in on this a little bit here, because I want to get back to the story about your side of this, seeing him go through these procedures and managing the pain and getting to this decision and coming to you. When he came to you with this question, were you surprised by it, or were you expecting it, or you were like, he's going to ask me and I'm going to be, for lack of a better word, angry at him for asking me?
I think the strongest emotion that I had was anger. And I was mad at the world. I was mad at God. And Kent was very at peace with God. He was just like, this is my path. And even in this deep, dark time. And I was so mad. And, he tells you about this conversation. But I think you need to imagine like a week long. I would come in the house after work all day, and it would just pick up the conversation where I'd left either that morning or the night before. And another thing, here are more reasons you need to live. And this is the impact it'll have on our kids. And, you're not leaving me by myself. And I've already done it all by myself, except for the 3 hours of the day you can function. And you're just not allowed to check out. I'm sorry. You've got to figure this out. And it was... but I think at the heart of that, the anger is the fear. I don't want to lose my husband. I do have a 30-minute drive home. And there was one time during all of this time, when you were feeling this way, and I called you and you didn't answer, and I called you again and you didn't answer. So now I've got 29 minutes of driving home, not knowing whether I'm going to come home to you. You've self-terminated, and I lost it. And I don't remember that drive home, but I remember getting out of the car. I'm not even sure I put the car in park. I must have. But I left the car open and running, and I start to run, and I'm running all over the house. Where are you? Where are you? I'm afraid to go in our bedroom, afraid of what I find. And then turns out he's in the backyard, and the kids had trimmed the bushes or something, and he was pulling it out. We had a little place in the backyard. We would do bonfires, and he was pulling it to the burn pile, one of his good hours in the day. And I'm losing it because he knows what time I leave work, and that he didn't answer that phone when I called. And, I mean, those are just little moments into how hard that was. And for me, there was for years, we had absolutely just lived in that, give us this day our daily bread, just the Lord's Prayer. And I never asked for anything beyond today. And I think it drove our kids crazy because, Kent's parents had a condo at the beach. Was the only reason we could take a vacation. And, we'd get down there and the kids were like, what are we doing today? I'm like, well, I don't know. We'll see when we get there. And now my kids are all Uber planners and live their lives on spreadsheets, and I'm sure in complete rebellion to how they grew up with us just living day by day. But in this moment where, and I'm pretty sure it might have been around the time that I came home and you were dragging the brush to the burn pile. And I felt like God just said, you are praying wrong. And I'm like, it's the Lord's Prayer. Jesus said this. You're in your head. What are you talking about?
Sure.
And he said to me, almost audibly, it is not good enough to pray to get through the day. I need you to pray for a miracle. And I started when he asked me to kill himself.
Wow. So the next part of this story is Memorial Day 2019. Now, I want to have Jennifer tell her side first, because Kent's got good hours in the day, and we talked about this at our pre-interview. And my curiosity was, he's got a couple good hours in the day, gets up, it's a different day than normal, but you feel like it's a couple hours and you're doing stuff. Do you see him out doing some things that day? Are you thinking it's a different day?
I don't think I realized it for the longest time, but here's what I do remember about that period of time, because May for an educator is like, we're eating out every night, or you're having cereal for dinner. I mean, it's a little crazy closing down school every year. And so what I noticed is, I'm waking up with my alarm at 5 a.m. Kent's not in bed. Well, and then I'm like, Where are you? What are you doing? He's in the garage. And I mean, if you've been in pain for 18 years, you have some around the house jobs that pile up.
That honey-do list is really long.
Yes, and when honey can't, then, there's the pile. And so he just started slowly doing things that he didn't have the energy, the time, the will, the strength to do. And it was just like every day, the minute his eyes would open, he would work as hard as possible, and then he would get all the way to the end of the day and he would sleep. And so one of the things he didn't tell you is, like, through all that time, yes, he talked about staying up at night, video games, but the other thing that he did was he just listened to Christian radio and preachers all day long. Kent was always at church, which is what kept, I think, another thing, all of us grounded and not losing hope all that time. So, like, even though that Memorial Day I didn't go, the angels are shining, God said you've been delivered, it took me a long time to realize it, but what I did notice was the complete engagement in our life again, and it was a little shocking.
Kent, you wake up that day, it's bonus day 1, or is it bonus day 0? Ground 0?
Well, I think the next day, the 28th, would be bonus day 1.
Okay.
That's how I've counted it.
So you count, okay, perfect.
The first day was, I didn't realize it was a bonus day. Right. So, but yes, that was the day I woke up completely pain-free. And I don't mean like I had a little bit of pain. I mean, there was no pain. And I woke up and I thought, this is weird. And I thought, this isn't going to last. So I've got to cram as much life as I can in today. And then the next day, I've got to cram as much life as I can in today. Let's get some crap cleaned up around here, because the house was a mess. I mean, I got more done around the house in the first 10 days than I had in the last 10 years. I mean, it was that much stuff. And I would wake up between 4 and 4:30 in the morning without an alarm, and I felt like my prison door was open, and I hit the ground running, and I ran. I pretty much crammed for the next 4 years. It took me months to realize this might stick around, because I kept expecting the pain to come back. I kept thinking, there's no way that my pain's not going to come back. With the level of work I was doing, because activity made my pain worse, and I was moving stuff around that I shouldn't have been moving, and doing
more and more,
twisting and moving around. Right. And so I kept thinking, I'm going to pay for this tomorrow. And then tomorrow would show up and I felt just as good. I'm going to pay for this tomorrow. And if tomorrow showed up, I felt just as good. I took Hillsdale college classes, the free ones. So I did learning basically from 4:30 until 6 when it was light enough to go outside and do stuff, and listening to pastors. And then we went to the beach 4 times that summer. I mean, we were just trying to cram everything in we could. And then in August, I thought, maybe this is going to last a while. And I still hadn't realized I had been fully healed yet. It must have been later that year, and I was talking to Jennifer, and I said, I don't understand now we had realized something had changed, but I was still afraid to say I had been healed, because I was afraid that God would say, oops, that's a mistake. I didn't mean to make you feel that good, because it was just so bizarre to suffer for 19 years and then to get my life back and to get it all back, to get my physical activity back and my mind back, and to have optimism again and to feel like doing things again. And so that's what I decided I've got to do. When August came around, this is a story for another time, I accidentally met a business hero at a conference, and I saw his name tag. This is like I was an advocate for people, and this was a drug conference in downtown Knoxville. And I would go talk to politicians about what's going on in the medical system. And I got down, and I felt like God was yelling at me in August. It was a 2-day thing, and I didn't go on Thursday. And on Friday morning when I woke up, I felt like the Lord was saying, get up and go there. And so I went, and I realized I had already talked to all the politicians that were there. And I'm like, all right, God, what am I doing here? And I look, and there's like 600 people in this room. It's the big conference room at the UC. And there's this guy at this table next to me, and he's got great hair. All right. Okay, I noticed great hair because my hair is thinning. I don't have a lot of, and I thought, man, that guy's got great hair. And then I thought, he looks familiar. And I see his name tag, and it's his name, and he's with a foundation. And so I thought, where do I know that guy from? And then I realized, he married someone I knew in college, in Campus Crusade. And then I remembered, my brother was in a Bible study for him, and there was a third thing that I couldn't get the third thing. And so I felt like I knew enough to go up and talk to him. Sure. And I went up and introduced myself, and, hey, I'm such and such's brother, and he remembered my brother. And he asked me what I was doing there, and I told him my story, and he thought, wow, that's incredible. And it's starting to click what the third thing is. And I thought, I know you from somewhere else. And I said, didn't you do something with a business in a certain field? And he looked at me like I had three heads, and he said the business name, and then it hit me who he was. He was the founder of a company that went public 20 years before, a company called iPix. Made great money, funded tons of charities around East Tennessee, and he became a great friend because when I met him, it wasn't because of his business stuff. I had completely forgotten that.
Wow.
And so he asked me out to lunch, and now he's one of my good friends. And he was kind of my Yoda through all of this.
I love that.
What can I do? And would bounce business ideas, because initially I thought, man, I want to make up all the time I lost business-wise, and I had business ideas out the wazoo. And I wanted to help people at the same time, so I was still involved in advocating, but I thought I've got to have a way to pay for my advocating.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Lord just, restored my health, gave me a relationship with a guy I never thought I would get to have a relationship with. And so I feel like God took me to the lowest point possible and put me on a slingshot and launched me out of the valley of suffering, and I continue to be on that arc. And I keep thinking, man, things cannot get better than they're getting. And as I said before, every time I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. Well, now, every time I think things can't get better, they do.
Man, it's such a transformation.
Yeah. And people need to know when you're going through the valley, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But keep going. Don't quit.
Absolutely.
And miracles, pray for the miracles. Miracles still happen.
Now we are quickly running out of time,
Right.
which is amazing that we went through this so fast. And I have 2 more pages of questions to ask you.
Well,
So this means we have to do this again
That'd be great.
because we got into the depths, and I feel like we didn't really cover the other side that well.
Right.
And we're gonna have to do that again.
Well, the other side has been amazing, brother.
And I can't wait for everybody to hear that
God has
part
done
too.
amazing things in my life and our lives. We
Yeah.
have grandkids now. I never thought I'd get to see grandkids. So we've got 2
That's
grandkids
awesome.
and another one on the way. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
thank you, Lord. Every day I get to get up, I'm like, thank you, Lord. Thank you for this day. Every freaking day is awesome, and I'm grateful for every breath. If I could count my bonus breaths, I would. I've done the math on that. It would be about 63 million bonus breaths. Every breath I get to take now that I don't hurt and it doesn't feel like I'm getting stabbed in my spine, I'm grateful for every breath I get to take now.
I smile because my dad was kind of this way. He used to kid my grandmother when she would have a birthday, and he would tell her, "Oh, you're 88. That means you're X amount of months, you're X amount of days, X amount of minutes, X amount of seconds old," just to kind of make her feel really old.
Right.
You're 1,630,000. Get out of here.
Right.
So I love that. Today is bonus day 2,245,
Since the Lord healed me, right?
and you're not just counting them. You're living them.
Absolutely.
You're getting off the couch. You're literally and figuratively fighting for stuff. You are taking your story of pain, faith, turning it into purpose,
Right.
inspiring others.
Trying to.
You are, for sure. I got one question for you from the audience here before we wrap up. I had a couple that came in. Let me try to find a real good one for you.
All right.
You mentioned, this is from Derek from Tulsa, Oklahoma. You mentioned counting your bonus days. How has that mindset changed how you make decisions now?
I don't put things off anymore. If I can do it today, I do it today, because we are not owed tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I have really learned. Take advantage of the good health you have now. Take advantage. Develop the relationships you have now. Don't put things off until tomorrow, because you don't know you're going to get tomorrow.
And Jennifer, does that reflect on you? How has that changed you as well? Like, now you have to just go along with what he wants to do?
Yes, because I love him, but sometimes no. I say put the brakes on things, but it makes me so grateful to God that He genuinely answered all the prayers, and I was praying every day for a miracle, and it took me a while to tell Kent about that. Right. But as I was praying, I would pray things like very specific, "Dear Lord, give Kent hope." I might text a friend, reach out to Kent, and then on the way home, I'm calling again. He's answering the phone, and I'm like, "Hey, how are you feeling today?" "Well, so-and-so called me," but he doesn't know I text them, and he tells me about the conversation, and then he'll say, "I have a little bit of hope today," and it was those moments that got me through. So I do say yes to lots and lots of his ideas, though.
That is awesome. what you said to me in the pre-interview, and I love this because we share this connection. You don't believe in the no-win scenario.
Yes, Wrath of Khan's one of my favorite movies. And there's a famous line in that where Kirk says, I don't believe in a no-win scenario, and that's my attitude. And if you love the Lord, we shouldn't believe in a no-win scenario.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining in and watching tonight. We are out of time, overtime. I think they cut us off the air. We are good to go. So until next time, stay faithful, stay fearless. Remember, freedom lives where faith and action meet. The lounge is always open, and so is your next breakthrough. This is the Prosperity Lounge.
Pull up a chair. The journey